So as you look at the world today, what we find is that many countries are really doing very well with handling what is called the COVID-19 pandemic. In many countries, not the US, well, we're not going to go through and name all the countries, but basically we have some countries where it's pretty much out of control. And we have other countries where it is really being handled nicely. And part of it is, of course, the way the collective, the national effort that came forth to create a vehicle for addressing it. But I want to say a little bit about this virus, because from my seat in the spiritual bleachers, it doesn't look to me like people understand it at all. I don't think people understand viruses. You see, and when we started, I asked all of you not to hate the virus. And we talked about it not really being a living being. And I think that kind of fell off most people's screen because people don't know what to do with it. And so they said, well, this virus is causing all of this sickness. Maybe, but maybe not. So I want to take a little bit bigger view of life on planet Earth right now, so we can see what is happening in a way that may not have occurred to many of you, because it certainly isn't what most of you are hearing through your news medias, whatever they are. And it can be very heavy to listen to all of the people, the statistics for who has died and so on. And often, what isn't monitored, certainly in the US, it's not monitored at all, but it's how many people have been exposed to it. In countries where that has happened, certainly China kept a pretty good record of tracking down people and so on. But this virus is really, it's something like 60% of the people who are exposed to it show no symptoms. Another roughly 20%, maybe in some cases 25%, have mild symptoms. And somewhere between, that last 15 or 20% get very sick, and a fewer percentage of them actually die. But what I want to do is take you back to look at how the world came to view this whole business of handling tiny microbes, what they are. Many of you have heard of the microbiome. It is a sphere of life where all these microorganisms live. It's where they share information and where they contribute to life. And they really do contribute in a significant way to life. Now, let's go back to this whole idea of when germ theory was developed. We have to go back to the mid-1800s. And for those of you in the United States, since most of you on this call are from the US, that was when your Civil War was going on. And during that Civil War, the medical help wasn't all that good, particularly on the field. And so legs were being sometimes amputated without any anesthesia. That was one thing, but all kinds of surgeries were being performed without anesthesia and with not so clean instruments. And so one of the offshoots of that was a high level of contagion and gangrene. And it was through studying this disease called gangrene, which comes from bacterial infection, usually from non-clean items of, well, you could see it, help or torture. And allowing this bacteria to get into the body, and then when the body is weakened, perhaps through a loss of blood and other things, this bacteria could set up and take over, and particularly in wounded areas, because of course that was the site. If you had your leg cut off or your ankle cut off, that was the site where these not so clean instruments were used. So in studying this disease, something called the germ theory was born. And people began to recognize that there were little agents that were falsely accused for all the problems in the world. And yes, they were agents of disease. But the microbiome is so big, and it's not just in your bodies, it's in the world. And for you to produce food, You need those microorganisms in your soil. They not only communicate, in fact, recently some scientists had figured out, I think they were in England, figured out that trees communicate through a stream of fungi underground. They look like nerves, but it's a little white stream that connects the same kinds of trees that are in a grove together. And so if one is sensing that the others are, let's say, weakened for some reason, the healthy ones will put out more sugars, and they'll send it along these little nerve links or these strands of fungi to each other. And they not only communicate, but they also nurture each other. So they're very important. Well, in the process of developing medicine, the germ theory was believed or taken in that the way you stay healthy is to kill germs. Now, germ means life, doesn't it? It is the tiniest spark of life, the germ. Well, at the time gangrene was being studied and this germ theory was being developed, people didn't understand about viruses. It took quite a number of years later before they kind of even came on the screen. And what's interesting is even though these viruses are not alive, as are bacteria and fungi, they were put in the microbiome because they're so tiny. Now, what do I mean by that they're not alive? Well, they don't reproduce, for one thing. They don't produce any energy, and every living thing does. Nor do they make any enzymes. And all of these are absolutely, positively tests of life. They don't do this. What a virus is a little package of DNA. It's genetic material. But it cannot reproduce, so it is not reproducing itself. Viruses occur when the environment is under stress. Actually, they are a signal of resilience because, well, what happens is they gather DNA or genetic material mostly from bacteria, because bacteria are continually extruding all of this genetic material. And the virus then is a coming together of a chunk of genetic material.